Morning everybody, welcome back to PincheAls garage. Today we're going to do some rear cambering on my Mark 4 GTI on bags. I already aired it up, so what I'm going to do is lift the back up, so I have to lift both sides up. So you grab a jack, get on the rear axle beam and jack it right there in between the two bolts. Not difficult. Once you do that, you'll have both sides lifted and you can actually do both wheels at the same time without getting a jack stand underneath. Of course, you still want to put a jack stand if you're going to be underneath the car, just for safety reasons. We'll do that in just a minute. Once you get the wheels off the ground, take them off and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so once you've taken the wheel off, the next thing you're going to need to do, take a screw off. There's a hub screw. This is what holds or aligns the rotor onto the hub. That way you don't, when you put your bolt in, the rotor doesn't spin around. Makes it very annoying when you don't have this. The next thing we're going to need to do is to take the caliper off. You're going to need an Allen bit or a socket, preferably a socket, number or size 8, right there. Now, if you don't have enough leverage here, there's a couple ways to cheat on this one. So once you have it in, use your trusty old not ratchet, but your OEM wheel lug. Put it on the tip of this, use it as leverage, and then that'll break it loose. Call it a day. I use this a lot for breaking loose hard to get places, especially because it's like angled, and it helps a lot to break loose stuff. Once they're broken loose, you should be able to spin them by hand. Okay, there's two, one on the top, one right directly below it. Take those off and then your caliper will come right off. Well, there you go, rotor's off. It's stuck on the caliper, but I'll get that off right now. The next thing you need to do will be to take off these 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3. Where are you? 4. Now the heat shield's held by it, so we gotta figure out a way to get down to this one and this one. Okay, so what I had to do to not take the bearing off is pull the actual hub and bearing out about 1/4 inch. So you can see right here, there's a nice gap. Now you can fit a normal wrench in there and to take the bolts off. This is going to be easier than actually trying to buy a special tool to take the hub off. Just make sure you get a nice little hub puller and just slowly pull it out. Don't yank it out. And the safest way to do it is keep the axle nut inside. Put this guy inside here, pull it out about halfway and let it go until it stops. And then if you have enough to fit the wrench in there, call it a day. Don't go any further. That way you'll notice here's the bearing trying to come out already. That way you salvage your bearing and you don't end up losing that and trying to go buy another one. I pulled the ABS sensor out, and you're gonna need an Allen wrench with a size 5 to pull that bad boy out. While you're at it down here, I mean, if you want to, I would recommend cleaning this off. It's always good to have a nice cleaning on here. Clean the magnetic side off of the ABS sensor right here. Get it all cleaned up. And now you can actually take off the hub bolts. They're pretty easy. since you now have space here for an actual wrench to go in. Alright, so now with the hub off, you can see right there. Now use the desired amount of washers. I'm only going to use 2. You're going to use MT10 washers to do this. And just on the lower ones. Once you have your washers on, that's all you're going to be using. Just 2 washers. That's all I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to go crazy camber. I just need enough to get the fender to the lip on my wheel. Now I've mounted the hub back on. Everything by hand first. And you'll see there's a little gap. From here on, you're going to have to tighten it down with the wrench. There are your washers. Only 2. That'll give me about a 2 to 3 degree camber for the rear, which is all I really want. Don't want anything crazy. Just want to be able to just tuck the wheel. I know it doesn't look like much, but I tighten them down, and you'll see right here. You see the little gap? That's right there where the adjustment's gone. So at about 2 to 3 degrees is what I'm going to get with this. And you'll notice the hub is still on here. I didn't take it off. This way we preserve the bearing without damaging it. And just pop that a little bit, so now when I push it back in, it'll seal back up properly. That way we can reuse the wheel bearing that's on here. I was able to tighten everything down really nice and tight. Your torque specs are not going to be usable here. My recommendations is just nice and tight. Okay, and I was able to use just a basic wrench to do the whole job without damaging anything. Okay, so one more small issue that you will come across will be the caliper alignment. Let's see if I can get a good view of it for you. There you go. Right here. So when you're going to camber it, this right here won't get straight. So what we're going to need to do is put some more washers. I use 3 to get it where it's at. Looks like it's centered for me. And I use 3 on the lower bolt. If you can see that. Where are we? There's a caliper carrier bolt. Right there. Right here. See my finger? I use 3 washers. Same one, MT10s. None on the top carrier bolt. And it lined up the caliper perfectly fine for me. That way everything actually runs straight and doesn't grind, and you'll notice it spins nicely. If you hear a little bit of grind, that's probably because of your brake pads. Brake pads will do that. That's normal. Alright, and that's how we do a little bit of camber. When you guys want to go to the extreme, don't do this. This is the wrong way to do it, to go more than 3 degrees. I would recommend shims, and shims aren't very expensive. You can get them on Eurosport. But I will show you guys some pictures once it's already all set up on both sides. Here's a good example of the caliper not being aligned. When you camber it, you'll see the caliper and the rotor are just touching, and you have all this gap over here. So what I did is put 3 washers on the bottom one and none on the top. That will straighten the caliper up and make it spin straight correctly. Alright, so here's my tool list that I used today. I used an axle bolt, nut, 3/16. Actually, it's 1 3/16. I use a star bit, star pattern, because it's what it needs. 8mm for the caliper carrier, and a 5mm Allen for the ABS sensor. A 16 and a 17mm ratchet, and a 16 millimeter wrench. That's all you're gonna need to do this job. Oh, sorry, correction. And this bad boy. I got the nut off about 3 to 4 threads off the nut. That's as much space you need to make the wrench fit. That way you don't have to take the wheel bearing off. No one's done this before, probably because they just take the wheel bearing off. I think this is just a little bit easier. That way you don't damage the wheel bearing. Pretty easy, straightforward. I already taken this one off. The two hard ones that you need to spend like $30 for a wrench. When I went to AutoZone, picked this up for 10 bucks, call it a day. And I got it the same day.